Hello, hello, and welcome to the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission. This is a regular meeting of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission, held electronically via Zoom on September 20th, 2021 at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place and agenda of this meeting has been noticed by transmitting a copy to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, the Times, Trentonian, and by filing a copy with the Clerk of Princeton, who has posted it to the municipal website, www.princetonnj.gov/meeting. Pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding COVID-19 coronavirus, notice that during this declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission will be held electronically via Zoom. Such notices have been placed on the official bulletin board at the municipal complex and on the Princeton website and are to be maintained throughout the year. Okay, you want to do the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Capizzoli,
I'm here.
Mr. Shore,
Present.
Mr. Endersby? Not yet. Ms. Satterfield? Shirley, can you talk? Shirley, can you unmute yourself?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Shatskin? Ms. DeSanzo? Ms. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Pyle? We do have a quorum.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. It's a beautiful day. Really appreciate you being on Zoom. So we have, are there any announcements? I think we're
No.
good. We have two sets of minutes, fairly long. One is July 29th, 2021. And I just want to compliment Justin on the minutes again, because he does a spectacular job and really well done and concise and everything good. So thank you, Justin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin.
So are there any changes to the July 29th minutes? I think those were circulated last time. If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes for July 29? Or do you want to, does anyone need more time with them or?
I have July 19th minutes. Where are the July 29th minutes?
Oh,
Oh,
it is July 29th. I'm sorry. It's absolutely July 29th, or July 19th. It was just in the agenda.
Nobody said anything, so I thought maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm wrong.
oh, I have it wrong on the agenda. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I do remember it was July 19th.
Yeah,
You were right, Shirley. And those are the minutes I'm referring to, not, there was no meeting on July 29th. Sorry. Sorry. I think, David, didn't you have a couple changes? No.
Oh. But I think I sent them in, didn't I?
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
you said you were gonna send them in, and then they were on the website, the minutes for July 19th. So, because that's where I read them. They didn't come in the packet.
Yeah, I remember reading them, but I honestly can't remember anymore. It's just been a very busy time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you feel more comfortable, we could table the minutes until later and then just go on to the resolutions? Because we have 3 resolutions that are fairly long before we get to the concept review.
Yeah. Let's look-
Okay. All right,
Sorry.
so let's just do that and move on to the resolution of 33 Green Street. I thought that was straightforward. I didn't see any problems. I believe there were very few conditions on that one, if any.
So I think on that one, is that the one that I didn't vote or abstained on and therefore shouldn't vote on the resolution?
No, I thought that was 23A.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was. I'm really trying to remember.
Probably says on the minutes.
Yeah, so this would have been
I can look them up quickly.
on the August 30th minutes. Let's see. But
Let's see.
I think this one was discussed at the July 19th meeting.
Oh, wow.
David, it doesn't look like you're at the July 19th meeting.
Maybe that's the problem.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think.
And I assume we're not supposed to vote on minutes or resolutions for meetings we didn't attend, right?
right.
Right.
Right. So this was, yes, this is the July 19th meeting. So I don't know why we didn't approve the resolution last time. Maybe we didn't have it. But we definitely need to approve it this time because it's been a while.
Julie, you may recall that this was one of the applications where you were advisory to the zoning board. And we did
Oh.
that. But then Elizabeth reminded us that they had also asked for demolition. So all this is the demolition to the rear to go along with the approval you gave. And then you already set the recommendation a month ago over to zoning.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for reminding us. Okay, so who was at the July meeting? I know I was. Shirley was, Frida
Elmer,
definitely was,
Frida,
Roger.
and Brenna was there, right? No?
No.
Okay,
No, I'm
so I
just-
guess it's just the 3 of us voting.
But I don't think I can vote, right?
You can vote.
you were
Oh.
there.
Okay.
Yep. Okay,
So
So-
just a question, can Frida vote even
I
though
don't
she didn't
think so.
vote on that application?
Three represents a quorum this evening, so you're okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
all right. So who would like to move to approve the minutes for, all right, the resolution for 33 Green Street?
I can move.
Okay, thanks, Rita. And second? Shirley, you want a second?
I'm not very fond of this, but I'll second it.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you. Okay, the second one is 23A Witherspoon Street. And I want to look because I don't think David voted on that one, but I want to check.
I'm trying to check it too.
Okay. Let's see.
Is that the one with the building in the back?
That's the one
Yes.
that's in the alleyway.
The alleyway, yeah.
Oh, right, yes. I'm
Oh,
beginning to remember it
yeah.
now. But I think I did abstain.
I don't. Let me see.
I can't find minutes, I find videos.
David, you abstained on that vote.
Thank you, that's what I recalled.
Okay. So Right, and this was definitely August 30th.
Correct.
So let's see, I'm eligible, Brenna was there, Frida was there, and Shirley was there. So there's
I'm
4 of
there.
us. What?
Was I there though? I
This is
don't,
Elric, but I can't get it. I can see you all, but I can't,
Oh,
Anyway.
Alric.
I have no idea how I got into it, but I'm here.
And he was there,
And I
he was there on the 30th.
Yeah,
Julie, I wasn't there on the 30th.
oh, okay, sorry,
I'm looking at the
minutes,
yeah.
okay. So Elric, we need you.
That's why I'm here.
Okay, so we're trying to approve the resolution for 23A Witherspoon, the one in the alleyway, the garage kind of.
Mhm.
There's, for 5th paragraph down.
Yeah,
It says, asked if the front room of the house was originally a porch that had been glassed in. I don't think it's really a front room. I just say entry.
oh no, that's the
One
one on
building.
Lytle. That's a different
Okay.
one.
Sorry.
They all blend in.
Yeah. This is the one
And there's
in
the
that
parking lot.
little corridor off of
It's
Witherspoon.
the one that used to be a livery,
Yeah.
livery stable. Do you remember that, Elric?
Yes, I remember. Sorry, it's further along.
All right, well, we had that listed as second, so that's why I brought it up.
Hmm.
Anyway, at some point, if anyone wants to make a motion to approve the resolution,
I'll move to approve the resolution.
thank you, Brenna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Elric. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
That's my hand up.
Yeah. Thanks, Elric. We believe you. All right, motion carried. Then the last one we're gonna do today is the application of Glenn and Ann Freeze at 505 Mercer Road. And we're not gonna deal with the Prospect Avenue resolution.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I
Yeah.
forgot. Can I just step back to 23A? I did get an email from the attorney, Chris DeGrazio.
Yeah,
And he wanted to make a clarification
oh,
on his, I don't know where it is. He sent me an email stating that he wanted to be clarified that that property, which is a shared open space, is a shared area. So he wants us to be able to just kind of make that correction. And I told him that we would do that. I thought I had a printout of his email, but I don't see it right here. And if that's okay, if I could amend that part of the application, so it stands correct.
all right. I guess do we have to vote to amend it or something? All in favor of the amended stuff? Okay,
Thank
motion
you.
carried. I see Elric. Oh my gosh.
Trick by wizardry.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're going forward to 505 Mercer Road, the open auto pavilion. Are there any changes or corrections to that resolution? The fastest application in HBC history. I think it was under 2 minutes. So would anyone like to move to approve the resolution?
I will.
Okay, thanks, David. Second?
Second,
Oh, Shirley seconded. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you.
I
So,
have to say that he had come in before, and it was that preliminary scrutiny that allowed us to vote on it as swiftly as we did, as a
Well,
equal to others.
and with that said, the next item on our agenda is a concept review, which I know we all appreciate greatly. So the next
Julie?
item, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you want to explain why we're postponing or tabling the historic district on Prospect? We were discussing it before the meeting began formally.
Right, right. Okay. So the reason that we're postponing the resolution for the proposed designation of Prospect Avenue Historic District is because there are issues pertaining to noticing in the ordinance that were not dealt with by the time of this meeting. So to be cautious, Ed Schmier, our wonderful attorney, has advised us to do that noticing so as to make sure that neighbors within 200 feet know about the proposed historic district, as well as publishing that notification in the newspapers. So in order, as we recall, in the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, noticing was done. And we feel that to be prudent, we need to also do the same noticing for this potential district as well.
So
Right.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I think that it's also not just for the resolution, right? It gives the public still another opportunity to be able to talk. Is that correct? The people who were not noticed, is that
Well,
protocol? I mean, even though we did have the meeting the last time, we did not have the noticing sent out. And I guess the second question is, whose responsibility is it to send out the noticing? Is it HPC's, or is it going to be the entity who has actually come before HPC with this recommended district?
It would be the HPC responsibility to send out the noticing if we're going to send out noticing. In other words, you had a private entity, a private group recommend this to you. You entertained it at your last meeting and you agreed to endorse the idea and to forward that to the planning board and also the council. So if we're going to give notice, similar to what we did in the Witherspoon Jackson situation, it would be something that HPC would have to send out. And I would work with Elizabeth to do that and put a notice in the Princeton packet.
Okay, and Ed, would it be just for the resolution, or is it also going to be open for discussion for the public again?
Oh, were they, I wasn't with you at the last month's meeting, where was the public given an opportunity to comment?
They
Yes.
were, but they didn't have.
Okay, then no, there would be no comment. It would be just like memorializing the resolutions that you did tonight. So it
Okay.
just put people on notice that you're confirming your formal action and that notices will go to the planning board and the governing body.
Thank you.
And just to let the public know, the public discussion continues both at the planning board level and at the council level. So public discussion is certainly not over in this regarding this district or proposed district, so.
Okay, so I do see that Mr. Zink and Mr. Harrison is in the public, and I just want to make sure that they don't have any questions on this. And if
Okay.
they do, I would recommend for them to raise their hand. Otherwise, we would assume that you understand why this is happening.
If
Okay.
one of the questions is about the stewards who worked at the clubs, I had sent him several names and telephone numbers of people who either worked at the clubs or their relatives worked at the clubs. So if that has anything to do with the process, I just want you to know that he has some of those names because they should have been added in.
Madam Chair, I promoted Mr. Harrison. He had his hand up.
Oh, sure.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, good afternoon. Yeah, I just have two, okay, yeah, I just have two questions. One is, when you say the notice goes to anyone who lives within 200 feet, does that include the actual owners of the properties in the district, or are you talking about people that are on the perimeter? Entities on the perimeter?
It would be people within 200 feet of the proposed district.
So that would also include the owners that are in the district itself, the owners of properties?
Correct.
Okay, so it's both. Okay. And also just as a matter of timing, will there be another meeting on this like in a month or 2 months, just so we kind of know for our own planning purposes?
Elizabeth, how long do you think it'll take to get the noticing out?
I think that if we could have it in time, and by the next month, the next month is, meeting is October 18th. Don't you think?
Certainly, it would be on the agenda on the 18th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I also have one comment, not a question, is that obviously Princeton Prospect Foundation, of which I'm the board chair, has supported this from the beginning when it was first discussed a few months ago. And the GICC, which consists of the leaders of all the clubs, like the alumni, the leaders of the different boards of the clubs. I've been on several discussions with them about this. Clifford's made a presentation about the process, and we are working on getting a joint letter from PPF and GICC jointly signed, that would go to HPC, the planning board, and the council. As of a week and a half ago, everyone I spoke to at GICC was supportive of this. They just had to have a few people weren't on the line that we just have to hear from, but you can expect something. Hopefully we'll have that before the next meeting. So, okay.
Okay, thank you.
And Ed, would you also recommend that the nomination report, any type of revisions, be finalized in time for that meeting? So that would be, if we needed to reference it and include it within the recommendation, the resolution to planning board and council, that should be the last final version.
Well, it certainly would be helpful if it was available to go along with the resolution. That kind of completes the story and the basis for the decision. So yes, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Okay, good. I have no questions. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right,
Julie,
Elric.
Eldrick has.
I just want, is it possible that designation is 64 pages long, and I started downloading it. That's when my computer told me that I was overloaded. I know I have something like 400,000 images in the computer, so I eliminated one and got into the meeting. But is it possible that it could be printed and sent out to us?
The nomination report, you mean printed and mailed out?
Yeah.
Sure, we could
I
do
know
that
it's a
if the
big deal,
agency
but
wants
the thing
it.
is, I can't look at it and be on the screen at the same time. So if it's in the computer and 64 pages is just that, and the application on Harrison is 100 pages total. So,
Sure, I mean, what I would do is I would ask Clifford to give us the final version, and then I would make sure that hard copies are emailed to the
that would be great. Thank you.
I mean, Elizabeth, you could just check, like, I don't need a hard copy. I have a separate like iPad thing that I can look it on, so I don't need a printed copy. So let's just make sure,
check with everyone who wants one.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a lot of paper.
I agree.
Okay. Are we okay with the prospect resolution now?
Yes, I don't see any other hands up.
Great. All right, so the next item on our agenda is a concept review, which is a wonderful idea for a lot of applications. The address is 22 Parkside Drive. Are the applicants in the waiting area or?
Yes, I'm bringing them in.
Great, thank you. Hi.
Good afternoon.
So because this is a concept review, there's no report from Elizabeth. And hopefully you guys were able to access the file on the municipal website. It was a pretty large file, a lot of big photos. So it's difficult to print. But I think it was extremely helpful. So I guess I would hand it over to Eric and Ryan. Welcome. And thanks for coming to HPC.
Okay, thank you. If it's all right, I'll share the screen, and we have a slightly updated version of what Elizabeth had already loaded on, where we've just updated a little bit of information for today.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So the site is at 22 Parkside. Interesting and slightly complicated site. Drumthwacket Outbuilding Historic District. Here is the dairy building, and the property line, which you'll see on the site plan later, skims right along this edge, so that in fact this little garage building is actually on the application property, and the dairy, of course, is the adjacent property. And then somewhere in here, it angles and follows the line of the driveway, where Glenn Freese's property then is over here and Mercer is out here. So a couple of introductions before I start. Also on the Zoom is Yegi Hayeri, who is the purchaser of the property. We also really appreciate that we're able to do a concept. It's a great thing. I'm chair of the Pennington Historic Preservation Commission, and we encourage the same thing. It makes a huge difference to be able to do it. This property has frontage on 2 streets. In fact, just today I received from the zoning office the prevailing setbacks for the front yards of both front yards. The property unfortunately has 2 front yards, right? Because it has 2 streets. So the prevailing setback from this street is 69 feet, which we didn't have that number for the preliminary design, but in fact, it's very close. We sort of have it set at 60. We'll have to make an adjustment to that to meet that 69-foot prevailing setback. At the rear, that's where we will need a variance, and that's very much why Ryan Kennedy is involved here, because there will need to be a variance because we can't possibly meet the front yard requirements at the rear of the site up here. So the property is being purchased by Yegi and Reza Hayeri, who are on the Zoom call. They're interested in building a modern house, and they are under contract with a contingency for zoning variance and historic preservation reviews, so that we want to make sure that there's a certain level of confidence that the project can be approved before they complete the purchase of the piece of property. So the house site will be in here facing this street, and then there are 2 outbuildings that are stylistically similar to the Tudor Drumthwacket dairy outbuildings, this garage, and then there's another garage here. Quick tour of the site. This is from the street looking towards the back. You can see sort of the right-hand small garage building there, edge of the street, and then the driveway, which sort of slides up along the left side of the property line, and then Glenn Freese's property beyond to the left. This is the small garage building to the right, on the right side. We're calling it a studio building because we're not intending to attach it with any kind of driveway or put any kind of vehicle in it. This is the garage building, which is the one that is on the left side of the site as we were looking at it before. That view of the site, by the way, was generally looking towards the south. So this view is from the very rear of the site, from the south end, looking towards the street. So this would be looking towards the rear of the house. the small studio building here, garage building here, and the dairy building there. Here's a view of that garage building, which is in front of the dairy. You can see the dairy building in the back. Here again, the small garage and a bit of the dairy building, and the property line just skims right between those two. And then this is a view sort of standing farther back at the opposite edge of the property, looking towards the garage building, again with the entire dairy building behind it. And then to the south, this is a view even a little bit farther back again. To the left here will be the area where we would intend to construct the new house. And on the left here, then we're looking for, this is also in the area of where we would construct the new house. And then there's Glenn Freese's house beyond. In plan, you can see here the property line skimming along this edge. That rectangle right there is a small garage, existing garage. This building right here is that existing building which we've identified as a studio building. And Parkside is here on this side, and then again on this side. So the basic idea of the plan is that again, we're looking at a modern house, and it's why we very, very much appreciate the opportunity in a context like this to be able to come and talk to you about the possibilities of a modern house in this context. But the front facade of the house addressing the street, and the rear of the house actually angled orthogonally with the existing outbuildings. So that, I'm going to go ahead one more slide here, so that living spaces here have an open view across the backyard in between the garage building and the studio building. There's a possibility of a pool back here. We don't know where we would put a pool, but it's very likely that that's a kind of a logical place for it. So similarly to the long view here, orthogonally between these two buildings, this wing, the view with the dairy building behind the garage is actually quite a magnificent view. So the idea here would be actually that this is in fact orthogonal again, a view straight towards the sidewall of that existing historic garage building with the dairy building behind it. And at the same time, then a entry from the street through a court. I mean, that's a heated and air conditioned and, you know, fully occupiable space, but it's a very open feeling space. But that's all glass in the back, and the view beyond that again is framed between the two historic outbuildings. Apart from that, in plan, from this center court, living spaces over here, down a few steps to a garage, a guest room, a second level study up above over this guest room, and then a couple of kids' rooms over here. So altogether 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, and then a study on the second floor. So when we submitted this on the 8th, I submitted this elevation because I needed to submit an elevation very quickly. Since then, I've thought about it a little bit more, and are, you know, again, I think we've spent a little more time on the plan. The elevation, I have to say, is still preliminary at this point. We're trying a lot of things, but this is sort of my opportunity to get your reaction to a few things on the elevation. But the idea here is that a stone base, entry in the center, stucco forms, as I say in the application, sort of bridging between the Tudor Freeze dairy buildings over here, and on the right side, more conventional suburban buildings, keeping the material simple, keeping the lines relatively low, and keeping the house set back fairly far. You know, we know from zoning that we need to stay back about 70 feet. So to really sort of minimize the street facade of the building. And then at the rear of the building, I don't have elevations of the rear of the building, but the idea there is that the rear of the building would open up much more with much more glass. One other option shown here is that you know, we might look at introducing some more wood, that adding a combination of a little bit more wood with the stucco and the stone, but sort of keeping that that palette of materials towards the street. And that's really a quick overview of where we are. If there are any questions.
I have a question about the materials. So as far as I appreciate the modern design, because, you know, I feel like trying to imitate the style of dairy would be, you know, going against the Secretary of the Interior standards. That would really be genuine. But I'm just wondering about having it recede a little compared to the dairy. And I was wondering if the owner had contemplated a darker material, like, or a darker stucco.
I think that would certainly be possible.
Mhm.
And again, I don't know that the front of the house necessarily, you know, that I think this design sort of naturally has a little difference between the front and the back, right? So I'm not too worried about the front starting to take on a different character from the back. And the front, I think, needs to do what it needs to do to work with the historic district. So I would not be uncomfortable with looking here at materials that would look darker and would make it look a little, would make it recede more.
Mhm. Are there other comments, suggestions?
Can you show us which street the variance is on? Like, can you show us where the variance is in plan view?
Well, so here's the site plan.
Mhm.
And, but you know what, I should go back to the site plan that has the house on it, I think, to make it a little easier. So yeah, so here's that same site plan that has the house on it. And right now from this corner, perpendicular, you know, we have a 60-foot setback right now. And I just learned from Princeton zoning today that I need to bump that up to 69 feet. So I need to push the house back. I think you're allowed to be 2 feet in front of it or in back of it. So I have to push the house back at least 7 feet from here. And then this is the other front yard, which is very steep. I mean, it really wouldn't be possible in terms of driveways and grading and everything else to enter from this side. But this is the other street frontage, and the prevailing setback on this side is only 34 feet. If we were to somehow build on this side, the code would require us to be within 34 feet, and then the site is actually quite narrow there. It would be difficult to accomplish.
Thank you.
Maybe just, I'll jump in. This is Ryan. I'm the land use attorney for the applicant. Because this site has 2 front yards and a 150-foot frontage requirement, on the right side of the screen, that complies, but the left side also would need a variance for lack of 150 feet along that part of Parkside. The other tricky thing is that in addition to the frontage, just this is an odd shaped lot here. And there's the lot width requirement is at the building. So once Eric was able to site the building on the setback, you're close to having 150 feet width there, but it's kind of a rhombus. And as you get narrower, there's a point in the house where you don't have that 150-foot width, even though you have it at the frontage of Parkside. So I think technically they'll need this lot just requires 3 variances to be used in any fashion. The left side setback, the left side frontage, which isn't 150 feet because of the shape, and then the lot width at the building line at some point, again, as you kind of take those 2 triangles, at some point it becomes less than 150 feet unless the house is only a few feet deep. So those will be the 3 that will be needed.
Thank you. Let's see, Shirley, Elric, David.
I'll go.
Yeah.
I know this site pretty well. The left side frontage, or whatever we're calling the second frontage that you have to deal with, is very steep. And if there is a, in the whole process of getting this approval, that, we might come out and say that variance on that side would be helpful for getting the project approved because of the steepness and because when you're actually down on the roadway itself, what you can see would be pretty limited. It's also got some thick vegetation there. We might want to see that that's still thick vegetation, but it's above your normal sight line. So if somehow or another in this whole package of getting this thing done, you have to move things or have a little less distance on that side, I think that would be something that we might want to say is good or acceptable and try to help you get through that part. My other comments were, and I'm glad to see a revised exterior, because basically that's what we're here to look at. Understanding the plan helps us understand the usage and how the shape of the building is on the lot and why it's where it's located. But the exterior that I saw when I was looking at it over the weekend versus what I saw today, frankly, what I saw over the weekend before the new drawing could be the same kind of drawing that might be, you're not going to like this, but it, stone base, stucco wall, it could be the same way a wall was described. So I'm glad to see some more detailing here. The buildings that are historic on the property and we're close to them have such a rich texture from the brick, the dark red brick, and then the wood trim around it. And I like the idea of a modern building there. I don't want to see a copy of anything, but I was just wondering if the building fabric, the fabric of the exterior could reflect either in color or texture something that relates to those historic buildings. And then my last comment is the positioning of the house, the new house, affords the residents of the new house fantastic views of the little outbuildings that are on their property and then the large dairy barn. But I'm trying to think of the other way around. The dairy barn looks out to with large windows to a new house that is starkly different. And I'm trying to think of the responsibility both ways.
I would only mention that the dairy barn doesn't have very many windows on this elevation. It has some, but not very many. But your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Shirley, Ulrich, do you have anything?
Oh, I
Any
did.
comments?
Could you go back to the very first picture with the trees? Yeah, you passed it. Okay, right there. And where is the house going to be?
So the house will
Do
be,
you have to take down any of those trees to?
we have to take down these trees right here.
Okay. David has asked mentioned some of the things. He's an architect. He mentioned it better than I would have, but those questions are already answered. But I just wanted to know about the trees also. How many trees have to be displaced for the building?
Unfortunately, I can't answer accurately. Again, this is, a sale and purchase of a property. It's moving pretty quickly. We actually don't have a full site plan yet with tree locations.
But the typical submission would have a survey of existing trees.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we were to come back with an application, we would certainly have a full site plan.
Right.
Addressing whatever we might have to do with stormwater management as well as trees and things like that.
Mhm. I was just trying to add that clarification.
I'll weigh in.
Thanks, Ulrich.
It's a tough one. I was interested in David's comments about trying to take advantage of the more private area closer to that steep embankment. I guess one of my concerns is that just the sheer bulk of the footprint, and you have a second floor for one room, and I keep wondering whether or not it's possible to have secondary bedrooms or whatever use a second level. And part of that is my question is if you were to get closer to that embankment, does that afford a view of Stony Brook from the upper part of the house that wouldn't exist otherwise? And I too wonder whether or not I appreciate the fact that it's not trying to mimic the Raleigh Gildersleeve buildings, but I wonder if a nod might go to at least something like brick instead of stone, unless you're picking up stone detail from the former farm buildings themselves. It just feels like it could feel a little bit more compatible, but you know, contrast, not compatibility, doesn't mean it has to be rigidly adhering to the Norman Gothic structure nearby. I like to see that you're still tinkering with it, and but I look at the size of the closet, for instance, off the main bedroom, and I'm thinking, you know, that there's a lot of space there, and it's I keep wondering if it couldn't be compacted a bit. Oh, you know, I think that's it. I think that's it from me. But very interesting.
so-
And if you can pull this one off, good for you.
Thank you. I knew coming into this that we were looking at a challenge. There's no question. And the adjacent buildings, are so rich, and so the materials that you have there are the brick and the stucco and the wood, but the stucco and the wood are really highly contrasted. And I think here, we sort of want this building to look a little more calm than that. But I appreciate the idea of sort of recessing it, making it a little darker. I'm actually quite comfortable with the idea of using brick. And maybe the brick is in a way that actually, has some texture rather than just a modern brick wall as well, to sort of a little bit more of a nod towards the history of brick. I'm sorry, I interrupted someone.
Comment, just Shirley mentioned landscaping. It seems like landscaping is going to be very, very important in making this building settle into the property. And when you come back, I'd be interested to see what thoughts you have on how that could play off of those large surfaces.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, the landscape would be critical here.
That's a good point. Thanks, Ulrich. Let's see, any other comments, suggestions? I just want to go back to the, I guess the contrast. I'm thinking about how rich the brick facade is of the dairy barn and the outbuildings, and finding a material that doesn't necessarily match it, but is somehow harmonious or complementary rather than, giving too much contrast. I think that's important. Obviously, the side with all the glass is fine, being an interior area. So it's really just that external exterior material, finding the right thing that would work. And then Elric, were you saying then that you thought the building should be more of a two-story, like a higher elevation, or?
It does, there's that one point, just for the one room on the second floor, it's not like it's a feature of a tower or something like that. It just bumps up at that one point. And I'm looking at the way just moving that building 6 feet is going to throw off it's going to be tough to get that master bedroom in line with the existing garage, for instance, if it's moved back. It's so tight on the site that I just wondered whether or not the actual footprint itself could be adjusted to leave a little more room around the corners. And as far as brick is concerned, it's like one of the few materials where there actually is a very broad possibilities. And some of these companies have a wonderful range, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but if it, you know, if it tips its hat to the existing building, I think that'd be very important.
I think as we refine the design, our intent is to shrink the footprint a little bit. I mean, again, this was, you know, a schematic design. In order to incorporate the entire program, it's typical that you end up sort of making it a little bigger than it needs to be, and then as you refine the design, you sort of bring in some of the dimensions. So I'm optimistic about shrinking it a bit, and I think that the alignment with the outbuildings at the rear is really pretty important to how the house sits on the site.
Thank you.
So I wouldn't want to lose that.
Right. So, I mean,
Julie?
yeah, yes.
Just a few questions. Eric, could you shrink your site plan so we could see the whole area again, or go to the other drawing? Yeah. So I know that the HPC had an application here, I'd say, you know, several years back, where there was actually a small cottage on the property, which HPC had approved demolition. And I believe at that time, the neighbor next door who owns the dairy building actually purchased this one. And I think that she is the property owner because I saw her name on the application as the owner. And so some of the HPC members are familiar with this property, in addition to it just being historic and you know, a very important part of the Princeton history. Now, there also is a windmill on the property, because I know that they were supposed to do some restoration or rehabilitation of some of the features on the property. And that was one, in addition to the garage, where they had some roof repair and some glass and things like that. So I don't see the windmill cited on the site plan. And I'm assuming that will.
Right. It isn't on the site plan that we had, but it's actually right back here.
Okay. And I have to agree with what David and Elric had talked about the siting of the building and its relationship, not only from the views from the property, the adjacent property to this property, but I'm also concerned about the views to the historic site from Parkside on the right side, where they've got the most frontage. And just seeing if there's an opportunity to perhaps rotate the building so it could be still sited without obstructing too much of the historic building itself, but still have an opportunity to really enjoy the rest of the land and also view out to the dairy barn.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're suggesting that this could be rotated more like an angle like this, or in a way that from the street, there's still more of a view of this building?
If there's an opportunity, yeah. And, you know, as you said, it isn't a conceptual view, so perhaps the building footprint may not stay this way as you work through it, but I think that might be a consideration that would be wonderful. And I just want to ask the HPC, wasn't that small, what's Eric calling that building, the small studio, was that the one that was required to be rebuilt by the previous owner?
Yeah, I think it was.
Where they started to knock it down and they had to actually rebuild the whole thing?
I mean, David and Elric might remember.
You have a suit going against that?
Yeah, I think that they had to sue him to come and rebuild it.
That goes back 20-something years, it seems to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the details. I just remember there was something that was required. I remember Christine having to go work on that a lot. I think there were some court appearances even. I guess we should go back and look at old minutes.
Maybe Ed could fill us in on that. He's there.
As I
Could we-
recall, the previous owner, not the one who owns it now, but the previous one, he started to demolish it without approval. And I believe that there was some court intervention that he had to actually rebuild it.
Yep, yep. I heard about that, and it's one or the other building. I guess the only way to tell is by looking at the brickwork.
It must be the farther back one. I was on the property within the last year and I can't remember right offhand well enough.
I think it's that one. Yes, that studio building.
Yep, I think you're right.
It looks freshly worked on compared to the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was rebuilt after being mostly demolished by the owner of the house whose house was later demolished. So the owner of the property, yeah.
Prior to it becoming part of the bigger lot and then subdivided again this time.
Mhm. But I mean, I think probably the concept review is about, is this possible? Is it possible to rebuild on this site? Is this going in the right direction? Are they far away or are they pretty close?
And I would just add to that too, should the purchaser, Yegi, proceed with the purchase process, or, acknowledge that it's just too difficult to get approval here, and it might not be a good idea.
Well, I think we offered constructive ideas of how to get it approved, and even wanting to go out on a limb and try to advocate for that variance on the, shall we call it, the second higher number Parkside address, like 170 or whatever it would be. So I think we're trying to say that this could be worked out, but
Yeah, I
think
agree.
I'll make a comment.
Can I have a couple minutes? Please?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yegane or Yegi Hayeri. Very nice meeting you all. I'm actually very positively pleased with what I'm hearing or what I've heard thus far, and I really appreciate your time all. I wanted to, first and foremost, I wanted to introduce myself. I believe my husband is also on a call. He's coming back from the hospital, so he's driving, but he's listening to this. So we're very excited to build our house in the city of Princeton, and we've moved to Princeton about 4 years ago and fell in love with it. And so we're really looking forward to it. I wanted to say a couple of things. One was the windmill, which was already mentioned. So I raised my hand before it was any mention of the windmill. I just wanted to bring that up. That is on the other side of the lot. So technically, we cannot get much close to that side in terms of building anything. The second thing is that everything that I've heard thus far with respect to the facade of the house, I just wanted to say that we are completely open to what HPC is telling us. We are not bound to any particular idea other than what would make sense for the lot, and especially in relation to the historic building next to us. So that's also, as much as it's important to you guys, it's also important to us. And we always wanted to have a ranch house. And when we saw this lot, we thought actually having a ranch house here would be very nice, because it would not distract the view of that beautiful historic building next to it. that it would not, I mean, Eric has been really nice working with elevations and how we can work with the various elevations in different parts of the house, including that study on the top, so that we would have some, you know, ups and downs with the building itself. But we thought we are really happy to go with this plan so that our house would not obstruct the view of that beautiful house next to us, because that's also something that we would be looking at. But in terms of the facade and material, you know, we rely on Eric's expertise and your comments. And I just wanted to emphasize on the fact that we are completely open to what would be appealing and approvable by HPC. Completely open to that. And we are not looking for a big house. I think the maximum we would like to have is really like at the max. So I know the issue of footprint came up. Like, I cannot handle a house more than 4,000, 4,500. I do not want anything bigger than that. So, and I think in terms of FARs and footprints and stuff, we should be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming here. We love concept reviews because it really takes a lot of pressure off everybody. You know, we get to all comment. I guess if we could go back to the unshared screen just for a second. Thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to see if anyone else had other suggestions. You know, I know we have another application. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on, you know, if this is potentially something that can move forward and we can work with. I mean, my sense is, yes, everyone seemed to be fairly comfortable, and there were some minor suggestions, but nothing major. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think in terms of the finishes, I think some of the things you've suggested are things that I you know, I've already sort of had in mind, that it's kind of the right direction to move with this, and I'm absolutely comfortable with this. I'm not exactly sure how to get there, which is why I didn't show you that today. We're gonna have to work on that a little bit more to figure that out, but I'm very comfortable with moving in that direction. And the massing of the house, you know, Eric's comments about a second floor, we'll take a look at that as well. I'm not sure where that might go, because I know the client is interested in having having fewer stairs and fewer rooms up on a second floor, and that's a client-driven desire, which I respect. But we will definitely look at the massing of the house and absolutely at the materials, and see what we can do there.
great. And then, as Elizabeth suggested, maybe a slight rotation, just to line up better with the street, if that's possible.
In fact, I think that will even help us achieve the 69-foot setback by possibly bringing the left side of the elevation forward a little bit at the same time that pushing the right side back a little bit.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you all for speaking. We really appreciate it. And, you know, hopefully we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Thank you. All right. Now our next item on the agenda is an item that was here back in, what was it? February of last year.
I think she got approval in January,
Yeah.
I believe.
And then, so we approved the project. There was an objection from the neighbors. It went to the zoning board. The zoning board said, everybody please work this out. And then they did, which I really want to give the Nobel Peace Prize to this applicant and her neighbors, because at one point things did not seem very friendly, and it sounds like they worked together. And so if the HBC had Nobel Peace Prizes, I would give it out today. But I hope, I see Brooke is here, and
Chris Tar.
are the Wempolds here?
No, but Chris is here. Chris Tar is here.
Okay. I just
We-
want to
we-
make sure.
We expect them. They said they were going to be here.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Okay. Because like I said, I mean, when it went to the zoning board, I mean, basically the zoning board was like, please work this out. And then they sent it back to us. And then now I know there's some variances, so that's why it's back to us. But I just wanted to, you know, thank everybody for persisting with this neighborly cooperation. It's really awesome. And I see Ed's here. So do you think we can, should we wait for the Wempolds, or can we go ahead?
I think you could start the application, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I believe one of them is here with the name Chaz and a hand up.
Yep, that's Chaz. Yep.
yes.
Okay.
So please, let them in so I can award the prize. All right, I think he's on mute, but
There we go.
there. Hi.
Still on mute. There he is.
Hi,
Hi,
Chaz.
welcome.
glad to be here.
We were gonna give you guys and Brooke the HBC Nobel Peace Prize
Thank you.
for talking to each other. And it's been a long ordeal. So I just want to put that out front because it's been a long process, and very appreciative of folks working together. It's always a good thing.
It was really
Thank
not
you.
hard at all, and we are really in total agreement with Brooke's ideas.
That's fantastic. Seriously, you guys should be on the cover of a magazine or something, because it's not happening often enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you. So Elizabeth, I know you have a report. Did you want to just summarize it, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I'll just summarize. I'll just kind of highlight some of the points. And actually, this is a pretty short report, and I do want to address a few things that the applicant had emailed me about today. So just for the record, so we can talk about this. So the applicant is Brooke Brown, has filed a zoning and historic preservation application pursuant to the Princeton Borough Land Use Code to develop a duplex by constructing a new single-family dwelling that will attach to the existing house on the property identified as 3537 South Harrison Street. The property is known as Block 52.01, Lot 102 of the former borough in the R3 zone. This development does require variances. So just to skip down, as the chair had mentioned, this was appealed by the neighbors, and their major objection is that they were concerned about the jeopardy of the health of a 15-inch sycamore tree that is located on the corner of their property. And 52-inch sycamore tree that's located on their corner of their property. And with the development that was approved by HPC, they were very concerned about the disruption to the roots of that tree. There was a report prepared by Roger Wells of Wells Tree and Landscape Inc. on their behalf, Robert. The zoning board of adjustment considered a revised plan which the applicant had presented at the meeting, which stayed 25 feet away from the tree And that report was within the HPC, my report. Although that was not a plan that the applicant, the objectors were satisfied to. So the zoning board remanded the application back to HPC. And as the chair had said, happily resolved with the plan which is presented before you today. So just to kind of go over some of the, and again, this application is in the jurisdiction of the zoning board. So there will be a HPC chair memo issued to them with all the comments that are presented today from the commission. So just to kind of go over the changes. So what I did was I compared the original plan, which HPC had approved in January, and in comparison to what they are proposing this time. So there are some changes from the approved plan. And some is a siting of the new unit on the property and retaining the existing driveway and garage for the historic unit to be used. And because of that, they'll be only constructing one garage instead of two, which was originally approved. The existing garage will be repaired and utilized for the use for the historic unit. Gravel tire tracks are going to be installed for the new garage instead of the fully paved driveway. So the new unit and its garage is going to be much further back from the South Harrison Street right-of-way. It's actually dimensioned at 42 feet, 2 inches away. And the garage will be on the same plane as the new house instead of step back, which is the intention of the neighborhood character ordinance. And that is one of the variances required. Other changes that are noted on the new house and garage is that they'll be wider and the new one-story addition, which will be slightly larger. And that one-story addition is the piece that attaches from the garage to the existing house. The front facade of the new unit will be 40 feet, 1 inches wide. So the livable space is 25 feet by 7 inches, and the garage will be 14 feet wide. The covered porch is now going to be centered on the facade, and all the windows will be 2/2 double hung. I believe previously there was a casement window in the rear. All first floor windows will have the taller custom windows with a shorter upper sash. The rear second floor balcony and ground floor patios have been eliminated with this design. So the things that remain are the cross gable roof is still proposed on the new unit with the shed dormers off the ridge on the north and south side. Dormer windows will continue to be square with 5 windows facing south and 3 facing north. The third floor door in the rear is going to continue to open and wrap around to the north side. And again, that should not be visible from the right of way. 2 condensers are proposed for each unit. On the south side, the new unit will be screened with a fence and gate. And for the existing unit, additional plantings are proposed to provide buffering. So to go down to, and if you need to, there's an outline of what's being proposed and other site improvements. Let me see, there is something else on the other site improvements. So there is the 6-foot board-on-board fence, which was there before, and that is going to be proposed from the rear of the new garage to the rear property line, providing privacy to both sides and along the sides of each unit. It's going to go out to the side yard with a gate for access. So the zoning variances that are required is there is a required setback of the principal dwelling, which is part of the neighborhood character. I believe it's required to be 16 feet setback, which it was previously, but now it is on the same plane. The allowable number of driveways is 1, and they're proposing 2 because there's one that's existing, which they would like to reutilize the garage and this driveway, and then they will add a new one for the new one garage, the one garage. And then there is a minimum rear setback because the unit is now pushed back to be further back from the tree. The required setback is 35 feet and now it's 21.1 feet. And that can all be found, the details within the zoning report that was also attached. So going down to the comments and recommendations. So again, it is very much appreciated that the two neighbors have resolved this and come in with a unified design. I think that the gravel tires is a great idea. I would recommend for it to be concrete instead, just for maintenance purposes. There was a comparison done for the original design, which was the one that was approved by HPC, and the proposed, which is the one that you see today. And you can see the width of the dwelling unit. The new one is about 4 feet, a little less than 4 feet wider. The garage, and so for clarifying here, when you see the garage width, it's 9 feet. So that meant each garage width was 9 feet. So previously it was probably 18 feet. And this time it's 14 feet wide. The length remains the same. The total width of the total width with the garage, which means the whole unit remains the same. And the height is also remains the same. The under original for building height, the 24'9" was actually the height of the existing historic house. So both the original approved and the new one today is 31 feet 10 inches. So that remains the same. And just the 1-story addition, that's slightly larger. Instead of 8 by 11.5 inches, is 12 feet by 11.5 inches. So the comments that I have under here is the width of the new dwelling in the garage is the same dimensions as previously approved, even though one garage has been eliminated. The width of a single garage is much wider than previously. The applicant should explain why the new dwelling unit, garage, and 1-story addition has been increased. And I do understand why it probably was widened, because with the loss of one garage where they had the second floor space, she was probably trying to compensate for some of that by making the unit wider. But I would like for the applicant to discuss that. Again, although one might think that setting the new dwelling unit farther from the street might minimize and diminish its appearance, it's not always the case. So what I'm concerned about with this one, or what I've noticed, is the new construction seems to overpower the existing house, even though it's the same size, but the house seems to be getting wider, even though the garage is not as wide. And because it's set back and the garage is not stepped back, it looks as if it's a larger mass than it was before. These changes do affect the relationship of the new development to the historic house and the streetscape of the historic district. So that's something that HPC should perhaps note and comment on. Although it'd be advantageous to have the new constructions far away from the sycamore tree, relocating the new unit so far might not relate as well to the street. The prevailing setback is 16 feet 9 inches. The existing house is 8 feet 7 inches, and the new dwelling is 44 feet 2 inches from the right of way. So again, the new unit is positioned much farther back. It's not really relating to the street as all the other houses or buildings are at this point. According to Mr. Wells' executive summary, a 25-foot protected tree zone is recommended and was applied to the revised design that the applicant presented to the zoning board of adjustments. This or a similar design may relate better to an existing buildings along South Harrison Street, but still protect the sycamore tree and eliminate all or most of the variances that are required. The commission should consider if they support retaining the existing garage and the driveway for the historic unit, which seems to be something that they would, because it's really more sustainable to keep something that's already there and build additional. The new unit roof line is the new unit's roof line closest to the existing house is 3 feet 7 foot taller than the existing. However, the front gable is 7 feet taller, and I know that this had come up with the first approval that perhaps HPC wants to discuss if there's a way to perhaps lower that building height to make it a little bit more compatible to the historic building. And then details of the repair of the garage was not included in this application, just so the HPC knows. And the applicant is just asked to confirm some of the things that were were determined last time, which was the front doors are going to be painted black and the downspouts will they be colored the same to match. Those were things that, you know, that I was just comparing to the original one. So I didn't see it on the plan. So that's just for confirmation. And the other items that are listed are really for the applicant to discuss. She did present the lighting information today, so I'm able to provide that, and also the wood fence, which I can also share with you if the HPC wishes for me to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so why don't I give the applicant a chance and the neighbors, everyone, a chance to address the report, and then I'll go around to HPC members. Yes, Ed.
Madam Chair, I think we're treating this as a new application. So Brooke and the Reiners, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is truthful?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, Brooke.
What I'd like to do is, Brooke, is to share the drawings, and it might help everybody to understand the issues that Elizabeth has raised. Could you share the screen?
I assume you're talking to me, Chris.
Whoever is in charge of sharing, I'd appreciate help.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. I had it up. Hold on, I've got to pull it up again. I think it closed. I had the. Sorry. Hold on.
Chris, is there a particular sheet you want, like the elevation? Or?
Yeah, we were starting with the site plan.
Okay, probably the best way is if you could reference what the sheet number is, because I think
It's,
that's the way it's listed on here.
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
Again, I've got them right up on my screen. If you can let me in, I got them right here. A1 is the site plan, and that's the first one we're going to look at, A1.
Okay, hold on. A1. Let's see. Can you see this?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Nope.
Sorry. Make sure I push share. And for some reason, it's not coming up. You see this?
No. Do you think Justin could do it?
Justin.
Oh wait, I think.
Do you
Can you see it?
So, yeah.
Oh, you can see it now?
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
so
So you want
I've got the share. I'm looking at it right now. So this is A1, the site plan.
A1? You want A1?
I've got it. It's all set.
No,
Everybody-
it's already up. Chris did
Oh,
it.
okay.
We're good.
Oh,
So
okay.
so Harrison Street's down at the bottom. You can all see that. The existing home is on the right here. This is marked new duplex, but I just want to be clear. It's a new unit, creating a duplex of the two units. So it's a new unit. Interestingly, what we've marked here, the sycamore tree is over here. And Ed could fill you in, but it's going to be important as time goes on. The Shade Tree Commission sneaked through an ordinance which says that your neighbor cannot build within the drip line of a tree that's on your property, cannot build. And to get a variance from that, you have to go to the governing body. I have a suspicion that somebody's going to challenge that pretty soon, but so as Elizabeth pointed out, the expert said, well, you know, if you make it over here 25 feet where I'm marking it, that might be enough. And we, at the zoning board, we had a house and we moved the house back to here. But in discussion with the neighbors, they really wanted here's the drip line for that tree. So the house has been set back behind the drip line in compliance with the new tree ordinance in town. This is the good neighbor plan. We met with the Wampolds and this is what both parties like. So I appreciate the chair's expression of thanks, because I think it really was a labor on both of their parts. By pushing the new house back about 20 feet beyond where it was up here, It really, when you look at the elevation, you can't appreciate the fact that it is that much further back and therefore will appear smaller. It encroaches into the rear yard here, and we're going to ask for a variance for that. There's a variance condition for virtue of the fact that there are going to be two driveways on one lot, which is not permitted, the new one here and the old one over here. But by preserving the garage back here, we could make this into a single garage instead of a double garage. And it's slightly more square than it was because it's been pushed back, and we still need to have the same volume that the house had originally. I'm going to move to the floor plan that just shows you this focus on the garage for a moment. It's here's the garage door, showing you where the garage door comes, and the question was raised. This protrusion from the existing home is right on the driveway, but the architect tells us that those concrete pads that Elizabeth's recommended and we agreed to put in could be 8.5 feet to 9 feet wide and big enough for a car to go down the driveway. So this is the garage. It clearly has some storage space, some space between the existing unit and the new unit. That's a void to keep noise to a minimum and so forth. But it's really just the garage is here, and that this space is part of the new unit and viewed in that light. And the other plan we'll show you is the elevation. The existing home is here. The new home is here. I think it's accurate to say that it's exactly the same height as was approved by you last January. Roughly the same width within a few feet. But the setback is extraordinarily significant. This drawing and the previous drawings you looked at suggest that they're side by side, front by front, but it's really 22 feet setback from the existing home. So I think that deals with it at some level, each of the comments that Elizabeth has made. Yes, it's not at the front yard setback by agreement with the neighbors, and they'll speak for themselves, but they were significantly interested in having the house set back exactly where it's placed, both to preserve the tree and to preserve their side yard views of the house. And Brooke very kindly agreed that was a good plan so far as she was concerned. It's virtually the same building that you approved, but pushed back significantly at the request of the neighbors.
Thanks, Chris. Any more comments from the neighbors?
Yes. I know that this height was approved, but I just want to say that one of the advantages for us is that to a great extent, it now preserves the existing streetscape of our house and this old existing house. And the new house will basically be hidden by the canopy of the tree. So I'm not concerned of the height of the house because it really, like I said, will be hidden by the tree. And we were very grateful that they were willing to protect the tree, and also really grateful that the driveway will not be some permanent surface, that it will be permeable, which will continue to help the roots, which will be under all of this. So the farther back we were thrilled that they were willing to move it back. And I think it's attractive, and I really don't think it's going to be particularly obtrusive. So we do support all of the variances that would be required to enact this plan.
I would just like to add to that to me, the really great, I'm so appreciative of this plan because all of the new construction will be farther back from all of the 17th and 18th century, 18th and 19th century no, 18th and 19th century portions of my house, our house, and the existing house on at 35 Harrison. Those houses and the trees were all put there in approximately 1835. And it's really remarkable to me that that little set piece has remained, you know, they're in constant conversation with one another for 180 years. And I'm just so thrilled that that's going to continue under this plan. I would also say that, you know, back in the old days, when it was a separate town of Jugtown, there were large buildings behind the houses. There were large outbuildings. In fact, the house, the 35 Harrison Street, was Stephen Scales' house. He owned a log boring operation. There were certainly major barns and things of that nature in what is now Harrison Street Park. So I really feel that this is consistent with the spirit of that, the relevant historical time. It's as consistent as possible under current circumstances.
If it could look like a barn, that would be awesome. You know,
But it's great. I think, and we're very appreciative of everything Brooke has done.
yeah.
Oh, this is so good to hear. Thank you. I want to give Brooke a chance to speak if she would like to.
Thank you. So, you know, my initial plan, I was really engrossed in what the zoning rules were, and I kind of felt that I didn't have too many options. So it wasn't really that I didn't want to take into consideration what the neighbors wanted, but I knew that I didn't want to go for variances. Since everything was approved and I was able to sit with the neighbors, I realized that it makes me a lot more happy to know that they support it and that they're happy with it. So the variances are just the, you know, issue at hand to make it agreeable to my neighbors, who I think are very nice people. And in retrospect, you know, I wish I would have talked to them initially, but I think I was very closed-minded about going for variances. I do like the idea of the tracks for the new driveway being concrete rather than stone, just because I think for snow removal, it'll be easier. So if Chaz and Martha are agreeable to that. One other thing I wanted to mention with the existing driveway, if you feel that it's too much impervious, which is one of the things I was really working hard initially to make sure there wasn't much additional impervious. I would be open to doing the 2 tracks on that driveway as well, so that there would be more grass and impervious surface for the water. So I don't know if anybody has a feeling about that. When I sat down with Martha and Chaz, you know, there were certain elements that they really cared about. And one of the elements that they really cared about was the driveway and the garage remaining the existing. So maybe Chaz and Martha, you could talk a little more about that, but I don't know, now I'm forgetting the questions you wanted me to talk about. One thing I did want to mention in the front of it, there were some questions in terms of the redesign. The attached room, which is now 12 feet by 11 something instead of 8 feet by 11 something, that's actually required for zoning. In order for it to be a legal duplex, it's got to have a 12-foot wall there. So that's why it's 12 feet. Not saying that it's not helpful to have that space on the existing house. The other thing I wanted to mention is The first bump out on the existing house on the left is the kitchen, and the second bump out is a lower basement enclosure that's going to be rebuilt. And that basement enclosure is 5 feet. So although you see 14 feet for the new garage, you're only going to be able to see 9 feet. You'd have to actually be on the property to be able to even see the space in between. So, you know, the size of the garage is just, a lot of it was just trying to keep as much of the existing design, the original design, intact, and then trying to avoid, you know, more variances for other issues.
Thank you. So I guess, Chris, did you want to share more of the plans, or is that good?
I think that this was intended to really focus on the garage and this bump out that Brooke just spoke about. You've got a set of the plans, it was sent to you. So I think we're all set to answer any questions.
So if you want to unshare, we can kind of, I can't see everybody very well in my computer there. Sorry. So basically, the reason for coming back is, number one, it's considered a new application. And number two, there are 3 zoning variances that are required with this plan because to protect the tree. So the main one is the rear yard setback, which goes from 35 to 21. And then the setback from the garage to a dwelling because of a recent ordinance. And then the driveway issue because she's keeping the other garage. So I guess I want to hear from commission members if they're, how they are feeling. Elric?
First of all, I want to commend you. It is a much better plan than we saw before. And it's always good to feel like we've had some small impact on these designs. Setting the building back is really important. I have a question, by the way. Is that the bride or the groom?
Must be the groom, it's bigger.
It's the groom. It is.
Okay, well, I think that they're a couple, and I'm very pleased that there are very few examples in the area, although there used to be a lot of them, and it's worth the effort to ensure that they can continue to dominate that landscape. I do have comments, however, on a few things, which I think are more just notions of what I think could be relatively small changes. I mentioned back in January, and I still feel like the height of the building is incompatible. That it doesn't have to be the lowest. The ceiling height, first and second floor, doesn't have to be as low as the existing house, but 10 feet, 9 feet, I really feel like that's excessive. And my experience is that actually makes the rooms feel smaller when the vertical proportion is altered that way. And I would encourage you, using the same footprint, to consider lowering each of those floors by approximately a foot. I think it would make a big difference.
Just for the record, Elric, last time she did reduce the overall height by a foot.
Well, that's something, but really just think about that. I'm in a room now, which is the tallest in my house, and it's 7'6", and if it was 10 feet, it would feel boxy as opposed to, anyway, that's just a personal thing. But I think that, you know, for instance, I like the fact that you've used 2/2 windows instead of 6/6. It's different from either of the original houses, and I think that's a good thing in it. And that whole street shows an evolution of building types throughout mostly the 19th century. I'd say the front door is an exception. By the way, I also approve of the simplified version of the garage doors from the one before, which was very busy. I don't think the front door is particularly compatible. And you find a house with a 2/2 window where the lower sash is elongated as the first floor windows are. I don't think it exists. And usually that median horizontal would be equidistant from top to bottom. And I'd have you examine that. But the main thing
That's fair.
is that, you know, it's that by moving the building back, the backyard has become minor, but you have this wonderfully expansive front yard, and it is surrounded by existing trees, including the groom. And I would encourage you to emphasize more horizontals on the facade and consider having a porch that runs across the whole front of the main body of the building. I think that it's going to be an attractive area to sit out on. You're back from the street, and you could have gardens and whatever. At the same time, it would de-emphasize that very vertical feeling you get with the configuration you have here. I'd even consider, or even have you consider, the thought of using the driveway instead of having the driveway and the stepping stones, just to broaden that front yard. And the other thing, Brooke, you mentioned about the areaway going down to the cellar. I have to back out of my barn in the morning, and I honestly think you could have the stairs going down instead of 5 feet, make that about 3 and broaden it a little bit when you're backing out of the garage in the morning. I think I've tooted my horn a little bit too long already, but again, the plan is notably better than it was 8 months ago, and I think all of us appreciate that and the neighborliness that it represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Shirley, David, Frida?
The materials and exterior lighting and all that stuff is still the same as the original application. I feel I should ask that. Okay.
Yes.
I feel like, this has been a good effort, and if we can, can we say that we support the variances that make it happen because it achieves so many of our standards and desires?
Oh yeah, our next step is really not so much a vote, is to create a memo that goes to the zoning board, because we can't approve an application with the variances. So this is going to the zoning board again.
Right. But if we could have that in our memo, I think that would be.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we support the setting the building so far back. I agree. I think everyone seems to be in unison that has been a very good development in this application for all parties involved. So definitely.
Can I say one thing that I forgot
Sure.
to say? So in the front yard, there's an old fence. Part of it was old and rotted, and there's hedges. So you asked somewhere in this memo, it asked, was I going to remove it? Chaz and Martha and I talked about that. It seems that fence should go. Although I'm open to rebuilding it if you think you want the fence up, but that'll, it doesn't, I don't know, I'm open to either. And then the hedges could continue across with the existing house, which has some hedges, and then just have the opening for the walkway. But maybe we need to just make sure we're on the same page so that it doesn't create an extra issue later. And maybe Chaz and Martha, you can talk about what you think about that.
Sure, I'm all in favor of taking down I have no objection at all to your taking down that fence. In fact, I don't feel that fence was legally put up to begin with, to be honest.
It's not as old as our property ownership here.
I would have no objection to your taking down the fence, and yes, we do enjoy the hedges between us, but I guess, that's your call, but.
No, not the hedges between us, that would stay. I'm talking about the hedges by the fence,
Oh,
by
you
the
mean
sidewalk.
The front, oh,
The front hedge.
I don't have any objection to taking that down, no.
And, to Elric's point, if the walkway comes off the driveway towards the door to sort of preserve that protected yard, I have no objection to that either. Although the porch idea is lovely, especially if you're going to use that yard, you are on the park.
Yeah, so,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's that, right.
So I'm open to the porch. I guess I have to look at the what effect it has on, I think we have a few, I guess there's still the space to carry it across. So maybe I can just talk to the architect about that and see. So if we did something like that, do we just redesign and go to the zoning board with that?
We wouldn't have to come back for something that's
Okay.
recommended by the commission. Is that
Okay.
fair to say?
Yeah.
Fair.
Right, Ed is shaking his head, so.
No, you're not coming back to the.
Never again, never again.
Until next time.
You're definitely not coming back.
Chris, I think that if you have a revised plan for the zoning board, you can say it's in response to HPC's recommendations.
Right. And we'd send it to your office for administrative, for the file, Elizabeth.
Sure.
Okay, great. So Shirley, Frida, anything?
Oh, this is the second time around. The neighbors agree with each other. The variances have been changed, and good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Frida?
I agree. I mean, it seems like they worked it out and they're making the changes. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
So definitely our memo should commend the two parties for getting together. And yeah, definitely, I think the porch idea is a lovely idea. It's a lovely wooded area behind the houses. It's just a really great part of Princeton. So, I'm so happy about the tree. I mean, honestly, a tree that magnificent is just exceptional. So, having the building way far back away from the tree is great, I think, for everyone. So
To know that this summer, in fact, the day before they came to trim the tree, which I thought was perfect, a man came from the state to measure the tree, and this was all part of the application that Robert Wells provided for us to submit to the state. And the thinking is that it's probably the 5th, but certainly in the top 10 largest trees in the state. Sycamore trees in the state.
Wow.
So it's really thrilling that everybody's taking such care of it. I'm very, very grateful. I am. Thank you.
that is wonderful. That is really wonderful. So I wish all our applications had a happy ending like this. Definitely. Okay, so
Thank you.
Thank you.
is there a motion, or wait, how do we do this again, Ed? Do you have enough for a memo?
Yeah, it would be the consensus of the HPC was to strongly recommend the granting of the 3 variances and any other relief that the applicant might have when they get to the zoning board of adjustment. And then we would point out in that memorandum, which you, Julie, would sign and send forward, the reasons for this and how the matter came together and how that the board unanimously supports the application.
Okay. So, and also, keep in mind Elric's suggestions, and, we just wish you guys luck. I think hopefully I'll be at the zoning board meeting when that comes up, whenever that is.
We appreciate that.
So Ed, do we need to do anything else?
Just say goodnight.
Okay.
Good night. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank
So
you.
good to see
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you
All the
so
best.
much.
Thank
Really
you.
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. So let's move to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. Do we have anyone from the public?
No one's has their hand raised.
Okay. And then staff and member
Oh, wait.
reports.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Yana Moore has her hand raised.
Okay, all right. Come on in, Yana.
Yana, we're going to promote you to panelist.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I am here to speak on and ask the question about an item that you had on your agenda at the July 19th meeting, which was referenced recently at the presentation or discussion, I guess it was, at a council meeting of the town and its Witherspoon Street improvements. You talked about, and certainly the prospect application, the need to notice affected properties, certainly those within the district and those abutting and within 200 feet. And one of the problems that has arisen, certainly there has been a lot of discussion about Witherspoon Street improvements. What did change, however, is that on the south end of Witherspoon Street from Nassau Street and what had been to Paul Robeson Place has been extended and crossed into the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District, where suggestions have been made for some changes. No neighbors within proximity or adjacent to those improvements were notified, nor the streets that lead into Witherspoon that would be affected by intersection changes. And that was a real concern. They had the town via the engineer noted that they had come to historic preservation and implied approval. Now, you have it listed as other matters, and I understand there was a presentation, but I don't know whether the protocol is to grant approval or to take public comment, because the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, a historic district, was not noticed to the effect that the boundaries or the nature of the scope of work as they've defined it had changed and encroached upon and has extended from the south, crossing the Green Street intersection over in front of the currently being renovated historic property of the Robeson House. So I want to understand that I've spoken to a couple of members that there was some review and that there was possibly a subcommittee of your commission that was going to take a look at the suggestions. The other part of that is only the engineering drawings were presented at the council meeting, and basically road sections and basic dimensions, intersection details, but not the kind of details that the Historic Preservation Commission seeks. And I was able to find some, I guess, additional information that had perhaps been submitted to you, which gave greater detail as to what's planted, what the plantings are, what's graded, what's proposed in terms of hard surfaces, the curb cuts, the ramps, and all of those details, including for this particular affected area, which there was no change to the area in front of the Arts Council, but the area from the corner, south corner of Green, beyond the north corner of Green, is planned to include a change in a crosswalk positioning, as well as the addition of a bus shelter on the east side of Witherspoon. Now, I don't know how all of that is supposed to happen. For one, the intersection is very hard to navigate by car, much less by pedestrian, and that change over to the north side. But the depth between the fence at the cemetery to the curb can barely accommodate a sidewalk. So I'm really confused as to what process has ensued that has given the engineer either the wherewithal or the authority to make these changes, where the neighborhood had never been given notice that a change within a historic district, the street being an important part of the environment. And we did have one meeting, I must say, I think it was virtual, so it must have been after March of last year. And Shirley can probably remind me and give the exact date, but that was a general meeting to talk about how to sort of integrate these engineering improvements and design landscaping and different elements into the context of a historic neighborhood, even referencing back to some historic elements of the street that long preceded the way it looks today. And I'm not saying add the trolley or the train tracks, but in terms of how pedestrian experience worked and could be enhanced to improve the pedestrian experience, but nothing more than that followed. And it was without drawings. It was a discussion. But prior to that, just before the pandemic was declared, before March 2020, there had been a presentation at the Baptist Church where the area within the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District, and that being from Paul Robeson Place all the way north, was the area in question and to be considered. There hadn't been sort of the engineering demising lines of where a contract might begin and end. But anyway, that line shifted. We were given no notice, and things are beginning that would impact not only the functionality, but the appearance of the neighborhood without any input from the neighborhood. While merchants were adequately represented, convened, discussed on practically a storefront by storefront basis, there was, and that was great, but it extended beyond where it was supposed to go, and it now is presenting some real issues with regard to how the neighborhood and its historic designation is either being disregarded and treated. So I wanted to know where the historic preservation Commission really stands on this as, it's probably not an application because it's a municipality proposing the project, but with regard to very specific elements that start at Paul Robeson Place in the historic district of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood.
Julie, could I make a quick comment?
Sure.
So it's my recollection, and it could be wrong, but the scope of the phase one, as I understand it, has always been from Nassau Street to Green Street, not to Paul Robeson Place. And, we have a historic district at the top, at the south end of Witherspoon as well. I don't believe that there were ever, letters mailed out to the property owners because this streetscape redesign is not a rezoning or, an application, as you say, Yana, that requires that kind of notice. So we certainly tried to be very public about what was being done there. And phase two, for which the design is just starting, which goes from Green Street on, I think there will be many more opportunities to have input into the design of that. But I just wanted to sort of get on the record that HPC looked at phase one all the way from Nassau to Green Street, gave comments about the changes that they were looking at from Nassau to Green Street, and will give comments from Green Street to Valley when the design of those portions of Witherspoon Street proceeds. So I think that, the public process in that regard and the process with HPC has been proper. I don't know, Ed, if you have any other.
Can I just, I want to say that, I've been on major transportation improvement projects. I was the director of joint development for the Central Artery Tunnel project. So I know road sections and I know where things begin and end. When the presentation was made to Green Street, it wasn't crossing through Green Street. So I'm going to give you a little lesson on the fact
Okay,
that they're working.
so can I clarify, Yana, what you're concerned about is that sliver from the south side of Green Street to the north side of Green Street. It's not from Paul Robeson to Green Street.
No, because there had never been any proposed changes, or at least had not been suggested any changes in the presentation. The only visual one that we had, which was a meeting that was held at the Baptist Church almost 2 years ago now. So there were no there was no indication that the to Green Street would end up being through Green Street, and some changes made it to the intersection essentially without any input from the neighborhood. And as far as notice is given, I don't know what kind of notice was given to the commercial, but there's a member of council who goes to their meetings and keeps them quite informed. And to the extent that they certainly knew what was happening at each storefront section of the roadbed, curbing, sidewalks, whether there in fact were meters that were going to be placed, where they were going to be placed, a high level of detail, let's put it that way. So that kind of information was not made available to us to know that the definition for what became in words to Green Street extended through Green Street as an intersection.
So I'm going to interrupt again, Yana, and say if you have an issue with how council is informing the public about our work, you should bring that to council and not to
Well,
HPC?
I wrote to council and to the mayor and to the planning board director, and no one had the dignity to respond. And about all of this, and CC, of course, our neighbors who were quite concerned about where things begin and end. Now,
I know there was a whole thread, Yana. People did respond to your concerns. The mayor responded to your concern.
no, the mayor responded to one concern and said that exactly this, that I was, it was sort of, I was overreacting, were the words that he used, to the change. And I'm not overreacting. It's not something that is an emotional, it's a technical issue about where things begin and end and who is contacted to be informed that a decision is being made within the historic district and the neighbors that are abutting to them. The Robeson property knew nothing about it, proposed crosswalk and ramp that might be put, you know, in front of their property, and how, in fact, that might impact anything that they might be doing. Nor has there been anything further, since being able to put a crosswalk there would involve needing to address visibility that is very poor on that side of the street to try to cross the street or to even make a left turn. So there's,
well, it's my understanding that some of those details are still being taken on under advisement. But I guess the question for this afternoon is whether HPC had a chance to review the changes to Witherspoon Street from Nassau to Green Street, and or whether they feel it makes a difference to them for the kind of review they were giving, whether it goes to the south side of Green Street or the north side of Green Street.
so is there a written report? My understanding there was a small committee looking at it, or what was the documentation that HPC transferred to the engineering office that either gives it a go ahead or not? Because New Jersey Transit hasn't, in terms of.
Yeah, I know. I think the engineering department needs to take care of this. I know when they first started this, and I said there should be some respect that if they're going to redevelop Witherspoon Street, there is one Witherspoon Street, and it should go from Nassau down to Birch Avenue. So the last I heard was what they were going to do to Witherspoon Street from Nassau to Hallfish, I think. And then all of a sudden we heard about what was going to take place from Witherspoon Street down, that we really didn't know about that. You're right. But there is going to be a Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood meeting.
Neighborhood association meeting, yes.
At the Arts Council on Saturday. So hopefully this will all be taken care of. So I think we need to go back to the engineering department and find out what they're doing or why they don't let us know what's going on. Because I know there were a series of emails going back and forth. And my remark was, stop the emails going back and forth and let's have a meeting, because these emails are, get to be a bit much, and that we should receive the same respect as what they're doing from Nassau to Hallfish.
Well, let me just ask Elizabeth if she's been in contact with Deanna. I mean, has Deanna talked about having more meetings or?
I did hear about some of the neighbors who were surprised that there were details that they were not familiar with. And I let her know that it was a good idea for her to reach out again and just to update them that, that they should be updated when there are changes made. And I know there was a fast track project. I mean, we had a subcommittee of HPC, which oftentimes even you guys were trying to keep up with changes and things like that. So, Yana, just so you know that when they first came in, I don't remember when it was, HPC had come and there was some general design and thoughts about the project. And at that time, HPC had appointed a subcommittee to deal with them, so they didn't come back every single time. And the meeting in July was really meant for an update because there were members of HPC who were interested in knowing what's going on because it was appointed to a subcommittee. So at that meeting, it was really intended for them for the engineering to come together and bring to HPC, the full commission, the update of what they knew at that time.
So are there minutes or was there a report on the review of this project with specificity to areas that are within the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District?
So there was a memo that was issued by the subcommittee that actually went to the State Office of Historic Preservation because the state office is, HPC is really doing a Section 106 review because they have grant money from the state office. So that review directly went to SHPO, even though it was obviously copied to people within the municipality. So that there was a memo issued and you know, we can make that available.
Could you send me a copy of that?
Yes.
Because at the time that I asked, there was nothing in the possession of the engineering department to handle it. So if we can, you know, at least resolve this issue at our 25th, I would hope that the Historic Preservation Commission will ensure that in their reviews at their own meetings of this municipal project that will continue through as it moves north through the historic district, that we are, you know, brought in as neighbors to review what is being considered, because in these days of COVID, there has been quite a bit of meeting. It's difficult to transfer information and data and you know, graphics for others to see. And this neighborhood is not well equipped, many, with devices that would allow them to attend, or if not just by phone, not view what is being presented. And this first sort of in-person meeting that we've been able to have is WJNA next week will hopefully bring to light what has so far in the past 18 months or so been, you know, shrouded. And we certainly would like the Historic Commission, I hope you'll be in attendance, Elizabeth, because we don't want to
I didn't know there was a meeting, so if you could send me an invite with the details, that would be great, because I do, you know, there was a meeting, and Shirley, I think that you might recall, because I think that it was also, I'd probably say like early summer, late spring or something like that, where I did talk to Deanna and I said, listen, I think that it's a good time to reach out to the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, because again, at that time I was hearing, you know, what's going on and things like that. And I know that she had reached out to Shirley and said, we can have a Zoom meeting. And I think that Shirley had said, well, is it just with me, or can other people be invited? And I think that it was very last minute, so I'm not sure. I mean,
I attended.
Yeah, so I think
there were no drawings. It was not, the specificity of two, it usually it's to the point that Green Street begins versus through the intersection at Green Street. And this is, you know.
Right. And I think that at that point, you're right. And I think at that point, you're right. I don't think that they were concentrating more on the two Hullfish.
Downtown, right.
I think Julie and David and Frida, you probably recall that they were kind of concentrating on that, and they moved up. So they might have just been doing that area. So maybe at that point, that's all they had to present to you. But I agree. I think that there should be a little bit more transparency and involvement with the neighborhood as, you know, moving forward.
Yeah.
And isn't that, Yana, isn't the meeting this Saturday and not next week?
It's the 25th.
Right, okay, because I'm sorry, because you said next week, and I just wanted to,
Oh, I thought I said this week. Okay,
okay.
sorry.
Mhm.
All right. Yes, David?
Thank you.
Well, an awful lot's been put on the table here, and I have been on this subcommittee that's been kind of stretched from, Nassau Street to Witherspoon and out Witherspoon up the hill. And a lot of it is engineering department driven, and we're given a small range of things to approve of changes that we may not have liked at all. And I don't know that we've had any more input from people who own properties along Nassau or the first parts of Witherspoon Street about their input or their comment than anywhere else. I mean, I feel like we keep being told that this is what we have to do, and it's what the engineering department needs us to do, and that the funding that they're getting for some of these projects requires some of these elements to be added, such as the bump outs and the slow changing lights and all kinds of stuff like that. And that the best we can do is to say, well, if we have to have those elements, let's try to choose materials that are in some way less obtrusive, or in some way design seems to go with our district. And we work very hard that way, and we go out to a lot of site visits. But, the questions about all the impact that these changes are going to have structurally, we bring them up sometimes, but it's not really Historic Preservation Commission issues, except for how we look at what benefits a historic district in terms of health of downtown, traffic, delivery, parking, access. And there are a lot of different forces out there saying we want to have a very pedestrian friendly this. And those are great things, but when you take the more holistic look of what benefits a downtown, and we bring up things like these various different bump outs or eliminations of or changes to delivery zones, or what the materials are going to be and the various kinds of traffic that might go across those surfaces. Are those surfaces going to hold up for the farmers market traffic or these different things? We're given a very small parameter of what we can even comment on and suggest on. And I appreciate that looking towards the Historic Preservation Commission to trying to look out for everybody's interest in this district and the input from people. We're not having those opportunities either. An outside consultancy that brings these up and tells us kind of like, well, choose amongst these, or that we must have these things, or that.
Well, that's typical of an engineering project. Everything is either pushed by money that's coming around the corner, and it always takes forever for it to be done, believe me. But so the decisions are rushed and not made thinking holistically, as you pointed out. So then we need to work together to make sure that people are informed, and it could be through HPC that the voices are best heard, because they're probably understood more through HPC. But we want to make sure that engineering is listening. So.
And Diana, just to let you know, all of those meetings, I did attend a lot of them with the stakeholders along Witherspoon Street in the business district. Those were mostly about one-way versus two-way and parking. It had nothing.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of things to deal with, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, and that conversation kept on coming over and over and over, even though we resolved it. But I don't recall them, and I didn't attend all the meetings, so I mean, the subcommittee can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure that they were involved in or asked any about the site details or anything like that. I think that they were more just like, how is one way versus two way or less parking going to affect their business?
Well, like they got
into
more discussion than that at the last meeting, and not until the drawing section that came, on screen that went down to Green Street, because I, was in attendance for the full discussion. did I know that suddenly it's now crossing Green Street. And there was, and Robeson House knew nothing about it, there was no one from the Arts Council there. Yes, the merchants had been part of everything, and they even talked about the nature and the longevity and the placement of meters in these different phases that are being planned. So they were quite versed in what was being proposed and had obviously been in discussions before, whereas our neighborhood had not, because we weren't aware that it had suddenly encroached upon it.
Understood.
All right,
Well,
well,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Elizabeth will be letting Deanna know.
Yeah, and I'll send
about
you
your
a
plan.
copy of that memo that was sent
Thanks.
out. And if you could just let me know about the meeting information.
Yes,
I'll try to-
okay,
Thank
certainly
you.
will. Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you. Now, Elizabeth, are there other people from the public or?
Yes, Kip has her hand up.
Okay, if she could just make it brief, we still have some more stuff to do. Okay.
Kip. Coming on.
Okay, David has to go.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to say quickly, following up on what Yana was saying there, I think there's one major decision. Well, there's several major decisions on Witherspoon Street that need to be made. And one of them is whether or not there are features in the streetscape that need to change as you move into the historic district. Do you want people to know that you're moving into an historic district? And if you do, what features do you want that suggest that? Do you want differences in the lamps? Do you want differences in the trees? Do you want different materials in the sidewalk? Or do you just want a sign? There are different iterations. And I think that overall idea has yet to be made as far as, our public works department or engineering department is concerned. They're just rolling down. And they sort of indicated when we had our meeting on the district that, well, gee, the decision on the trees have already been made by the arborist, not by you guys. You're not involved. And all these other decisions have already been made, and they're not. I wouldn't call them all engineering decisions. And they still don't anticipate the issue of whether or not you want to herald that you are joining a new historic district. And remember too that the African American district went up to Nassau Street. The Citizen newspaper is part of the CBD and not part of the Witherspoon Jackson historic district. So I don't know how to handle that, but I mean, that's just a fact. And it seems to me that Witherspoon is so important. It goes all the way through the town. It bisects and it connects the township and Valley Road School in that area. The Witherspoon's estate. So there needs to be some understanding of how a person knows as an outsider that they're traversing these different areas, or maybe not. But we have a lot of tourists who are driving around town and they're not getting the story. And signage is a big part of that, but also just color changes and changes in the features, the lamps, the trees, everything. You could have some differences or not. So these overarching things have never, I don't think, been discussed by the Historic Preservation Commission, or have you been able to give an opinion to the engineering folks as to what you would like to see?
Right. I mean, I think you're kind of echoing what Yana said.
I am.
And so I think the next step, and I get your points, and I think the next step is really to get the message loud and clear to engineering, and I think Elizabeth can do that there hasn't been enough input here, and there needs to be more meetings, more presentations, and more transparency about these decisions. So definitely that message is going to be carried forward. And Elizabeth, I trust that you can, since you're next door to Deanna, that you can get her attention there.
Yeah, and Kim,
I would like to see the HPC as a body have input.
Yeah,
You're
definitely.
not representing the neighborhood, you're not representing the citizens at large, you are representing historic preservation. So,
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment,
you.
public
Can I say
comment is
some- can I
done
just
now.
say something
Yes,
real
Shirley
fast?
gets to say something. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Kip, I've already talked to, is her name Deanna or Dan? I don't know, whatever. Yeah,
Deanna.
I've already talked to her about the respect of the neighborhood and how we should be perceived when they redo Witherspoon Street. And I gave an example of when Mr. Craig said that it used to be a promenade and African Americans will walk up and down Witherspoon Street with their finest wares. So I've already talked to them about having respect for this part of Witherspoon Street and how it should look to represent this community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, so thank you guys. So we're gonna go into a closed session now. So Justin, how do we do that?
I think he sent a new link.
All right, so basically, we're having a short closed session. Really? He sent a link?
Yeah, because we have to end this session and we have to plug
But
it into
I
a
don't-
new one.
No, I think
don't
that was
see
background information.
I only sent the link to you, Elizabeth.
Oh, okay, I'll send it
You
to
said you were
everyone
gonna
then.
forward it.
Oh,
I can also
sorry.
just put it, I could put it in the chat as well, if that's easier.
Oh, no, I don't know.
No.
Don't we
Yeah,
have
I
to
can do it.
leave? Can we leave this meeting? I mean,
Yes, and then you get to another one.
Mhm.
right, so, but don't you have to like,
End it.
yeah, don't you have to end it to get a new link or something? I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, could I open the chat and push the link and then I go to another meeting?
Wait, I just want to make sure I have Shirley, Frida, David Shore, Ed, Julie. Did I miss anyone? I can't, oh, Justin, you have your own link, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna forward this to everybody and then we're gonna end this meeting.
I mean, at this point too, sorry, my window's open. There aren't any attendees outside of the board in the meeting, which was the concern why we made the second one. I can lock the webinar so no one can join and then we could just do it from here. I'll just turn the recording off as
But the
well.
problem, but Justin, we can't, can you stop recording?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, so that's the thing that